Thank you, Zimbabwe, for tuning into yet another informative edition of your program. This is Agricultural New Directions, Agribusiness, and we are coming to you in 2021 with this first episode where we have taken the liberty of inviting the Business Development Manager of SC Seeds, Tinashe Mugadza. Tinashe, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much. It's always a pleasure to have you, Wadzanai.
Thank you. Now, this is a platform where we focus on business issues and business ethics and their application in the agricultural industry of Zimbabwe as we pave way for achieving Vision 2030 as a country. Now, in this particular episode, we are going to be focusing on pasture production. Pastures as a supplement to our livestock here in Zimbabwe, looking at dairy production, beef cattle ranching, poultry production, and I am with Tinashe. Tinashe, as we get into our discussion, for starters, I would like us to talk about the wide range of pastures available in Zimbabwe or for our climatic conditions here in Zimbabwe.
Thank you so much, Wadzanai. In Zimbabwe, we are blessed that, of course, we have got natural rangelands. And on top of that, ourselves from SC Seeds, we have improved and we have bred improved pastures that are better in terms of nutritional value as compared to these natural rangelands. And these, they vary from grasses, legume pastures and forages. Just briefly, under grasses, we have got your kikuyu, your rhodes grass catambora, your star grass, your bracharia, your smart's finger. These, they actually serve animals mainly for grazing. And then we have got under legume pastures. As you know, legumes, they're mainly for protein. And these legume pastures, they're mainly for protein as well.
Okay.
And the range, it ranges from the lucerne, which is the king pasture or the king haymaker, as some call it. And then we also have got the velvet bean, the lab, the sun hemp, the clovers, and the legume pastures. Also on forages, that's when we have got the forage sorghums, and we also have got the oats under that the same. And they're mainly used for preservation and to make silage or for preservation, making hay.
Okay. Now, I understand that given the wide range of pastures that you have just outlined right now, there are those that are suitable for our farmers in various geographical spheres of Zimbabwe. What are the key principles or the key aspects that these farmers need to take cognizance of if he's going to say or she's going to say, I'm going to be venturing into pasture production for my livestock? What are the fundamental principles for production of pastures?
Thank you so much. That's a very important question, not only to the new and upcoming farmers who are joining to start to do pastures, but also to those who are already doing pastures. It's important, the question that you've asked. I would say three things they guide. Number one, when a farmer wants to establish a pasture, they need to know the rainfall amount that they receive in their area.
Okay.
The rainfall intensity as well as the rainfall distribution. This affects, like all other crops, pastures as well, they need rain. But then there is, as I've mentioned, the three categories. They all require different amounts of rainfall.
Okay.
So if a farmer make a mistake and they choose a pasture which requires a high amount of water and they do not receive that, then they are not going to get the best of that. So the first one, the farmers, they need to know the amount of rainfall they receive per season. On that rainfall, the rainfall intensity as well as the rainfall distribution.
Okay, so just to cut you short, when you're saying or you're talking in terms of rainfall distributions and intensity, we understand that our Zimbabwean farmers, some of them, I would say communal or subsistence farmers, not taking anything away from them, vanongo to kumafuro. So you are saying these pastures also require the same amount of rainfall, and they might be even competing with our maize or ours. They also need rainfall. It's very pertinent.
Thank you so exactly. A pasture, like I said, it's an improved crop. We have actually done some work in breeding and to make it better.
Okay.
These ones, they're different from the natural rangelands. There are still grasses, yes, but there's amount of work that is done. In your natural rangelands, you get your average crude protein around 7 to 8%.
Okay.
But in animal, just for the basic upkeep of an animal, they need a minimum of 8.
Okay.
So which means you need an improved pasture. So in terms of rainfall, also in terms of priority, that the farmers, they think, I know if we're doing maize, we're better off than someone who's doing pasture.
Yes.
But it's all business. Farming is business.
Yes.
You are into livestock. Farming is business. You need to invest in your pastures so that you improve. The same way we do the crops is the same way we should look after the pasture crops.
Okay, this is very important, Tinashe. Like I alluded to earlier, we are moving towards attaining Vision 2030 as a country. And if you look at Sustainable Development Goal number 2, talks of eradication of hunger. We are saying no hunger, no more hunger. And we are talking of livestock production, which speaks to our nutrition, to our food security and nutrition cluster. Now, as we move right along, let us talk about the management of the pastures. I understand that if you are equating these pastures to crops, they also require management. In crops, we have weeding, fertilizer application, chemical application. Now, when it comes to managing the pastures, what does a farmer need to do? What does he have to look at? Or the key aspects or factors that are fundamental in terms of managing his pastures?
Thank you so much. I would like to respond to your question also together with the one that you asked me previously. And just to highlight on what you have mentioned about Vision 30 and eradicating of hunger.
Yes.
It is important, and farming is a business. Livestock is a business. Maize is also a business. And these two, they all lead us into zero hunger in Zimbabwe. You do well in your livestock. That's your poultry. That's your beef. That's your cattle. You get money, you buy the maize. You do well in your maize. You get money, you buy the meat in the butchery. So this all works together in hunger eradication.
Yes.
And to a hunger-free Zimbabwe.
Yes.
Now to the question that asked me previously, as I'm going into the question that you just asked me. The first thing I've mentioned is the rainfall. The second thing is the pastures adaptability to low temperature and frost. That is important.
Okay.
In Zimbabwe, you know, our pastures, you can grow them throughout the year.
Yes.
But in Zimbabwe, we do not receive rainfall during the winter.
Yes.
That means a farmer who do not have irrigation is limited to some pastures and should concentrate on the summer pastures, which does well with the natural rainfall that we receive.
Okay. Now,
the third
Tinashe,
thing,
okay, just to cut you short, I understand that you have said a farmer without irrigation is limited to a certain variety or certain pastures, meaning there is a provision for those without irrigation. Now, I understand that some of our farmers and even the government has taken the initiative of providing irrigation facilities to our local farmers. Now, let us talk about those pastures just before you go on to your third factor. Those that are available to those farmers that do not have irrigation. We have farmers in Masvingo, some in Midlands, who have beautiful breeds of cattle, who have beautiful herds of cattle, but during winter or during the dry season, some of their cattle die. Yes. We have been talking about this just this previous season. What are those varieties? What are those pastures that are suitable for those that are in Masvingo?
Thank you so much. Broadly, you know, you asked me about the wide range of pastures, and I've said grasses, legumes, and forages. But more broad to that, they are categorized in two.
Okay.
As a summer crop or a winter crop.
Okay.
And it doesn't mean that someone, if do not have water or irrigation during winter, then they cannot establish a proper pasture that benefits them throughout the year.
Okay.
No, there are plenty of those grasses, for example. There are winter grasses, there are summer grasses. There are winter legume pastures, there are summer legume pastures. So a farmer who, for example, do not have any irrigation, they have to make use of the winter,
okay.
of who do not have, they have to make use of the summer season. And
to capitalize on
summer. And then preserve enough feed throughout the winter period
season,
so that their animals, they continue to get a balanced diet throughout the year.
Okay.
Our key mandate when we are into breeding of these pastures, we say to all farmers, balanced diet is also important to our livestock. The same way it is encouraged to humans.
Yes.
It is the same way the animals they need. You mentioned something that, you know, during the winter you see some animals not looking so healthy. It's because the farmers, they forget about the animals.
Okay.
They forget about the diet of it. So what we are saying, you do not have irrigation. Let's capitalize during the summer season when we receive rain. And then we preserve our food. The same way we preserve food off season, We do our maize, we do our groundnuts.
We do our carpenter.
Yes. The same way we preserve. If you give me opportunity, I'm going to talk more on how we can preserve the same.
Okay.
The third factor that farmers should look
Tinashe,
into.
I'm going to have to cut you short. Now, viewers, we're going to go on a short commercial break. We'll be right back with this and more in the second segment of your program. Stay tuned. Welcome back, viewers. We are in the second segment of your program, Agriculture New Directions, Agribusiness. Now, viewers, we encourage you to be a part of these conversations. Feel free to get in touch with me, the producer, Wadzanai Manyore, on 0772-807-506. Alternatively, you can like our Facebook page, Agribusiness with Wadzanai. You can make a follow-up and more on this episode and leave your comments and suggestions on our YouTube channel, Agribusiness with Wadzanai. We are also available on Twitter, and our Twitter handle there is at Agribusiness110. Now, in this segment, I'm still with Tinashe Mgaza, the Business Development Manager Executive of AC Seeds, right here in Harare, Zimbabwe. Now, Tinashe, earlier on, before we went to the break, you were talking of the fundamental principles that a farmer needs to take cognizance of if he's making a choice on a pasture to invest in or a pasture to produce. You were on the third point. You can carry on from that.
Thank you so much. So the third one is the function of a pasture.
Okay.
You have mentioned earlier on that we have got farmers who are into dairy, who are into beef, who are doing poultry, etc. They all require different pastures because they serve different purposes. For example, you are seeing here, I've got my chickens here at my small plot. They are grazing on lucerne.
Yes.
And this setup, I can't recommend lucerne to someone who is into beef, or I can't recommend it to someone who is just into multiplication.
Okay.
Because this is an expensive pasture crop.
Okay.
But someone who is into multiplication of the animals.
Okay.
Like in Shona Mombado Zingowanda.
Yes.
But so that person should get a pasture that gives them the adequate nutrients for general maintenance of an animal.
Okay.
And that also should minimize the cost. So in short, I'm saying the three things. The number one is the rainfall. Number two is the adaptability of the pasture to low temperature or to winter rather. And then the third one is the function of the pasture. You want to do beef, for example. Do you want to give it to your animals that are going for pen fattening? Do you want to give to your animals that are just growing up? Are you giving it to calves? You are into dairy. You obviously need something of high protein that gives you more milk in doing so. And you have got your animals that are pregnant. You definitely need to give them a different pasture for each enterprise.
Okay, now just to zero in on what you have been saying, I'm going to ask you in terms of poultry, beef cattle ranching, dairy production, or even some who are into, goat production or sheep production. Yeah. Let us talk about poultry production. We are standing in here where you have your indigenous chickens that are feeding on this lucerne. What is the science or the math behind this setup? I understand that your chickens are feeding on grass on these plants. What is going on?
Okay, thank you so much. I would say my chickens, they are grazing on lucerne.
Yes.
And they are grazers as well, these free-range chickens.
Yes.
And lucerne specifically, of all the other legume pastures, it's a legume pasture. For all the other legume pastures, this is the king of it.
Okay.
Some they say the king of fodder, the king of the give it more superior and superior names.
Okay.
Because this one has got a higher crude protein, higher protein content. Number two, this lucerne, it's more palatable.
Okay.
It's more palatable.
It's easy to digest as well.
Highly digestible.
Okay.
And so that its palatability, the nutritional value, the digestibility that we're just talking about, this
is what makes it suitable for the road runners.
For these free-range chickens.
Okay.
So you know what I'm doing? I'm cutting short up to 65% of the feed, commercial feed that I buy. So I now use I now use only 35% of that.
Okay.
Because I am supplementing on this. You know, during the day, they are grazing on this. And then later on, they just go and have that final feed. They actually enjoy this more. And it's an easy cost for me because this is a perennial crop.
Okay.
So I've established the last year. This year I'm still enjoying, and there are 4 more seasons to continue still enjoying.
Okay, so for
see how much
you can have actually 5 seasons.
Yes,
of your chickens just feeding on Lucerne.
Yes.
Okay.
So on your question now that you asked me, the key things that farmers they should look into is how much feed that their enterprises require, in terms of the carbohydrates, the starch, and also in terms of the protein.
Okay.
Carbohydrate is always high. You know, like in Shona we always have got our sadza nemuriwo.
Yes.
So you always have got your big sadza and a small muriwo that's a small portion of nyama and stuff, but it's still a balancing diet.
Yes.
So you still need your higher starch or a higher carbohydrate. Which this talks to the grasses. So if we are to go into grasses, we now bring in these other factors that we're talking about, the rainfall. If a farmer is into beef, into dairy, but do not have rainfall, they can do drought-tolerant pastures.
Okay.
They do not irrigation. I mean, they can do these dryland pastures, which includes your stargrass, your rhodes grass, catambora, your smart's finger. These ones you can do with the natural rainfall that we receive.
Yes.
And these ones, they have their protein content. It ranges from 8 to 15%.
Okay.
So this means it also makes our animals to be okay for just general maintenance.
Okay.
But because they go up to 15%, you can still feed them to your pregnant animals, giving them high energy.
Okay.
But we're now talking of a dairy farmer, or a farmer who has got the animals that are going next for pen fattening. They now need something that is above this
15%.
range. 15.
Okay.
So when the range is from 8 to 15, I usually urge farmers that to work with the average.
Okay.
In case you don't attain the maximum. For you to attain the maximum, it talks to the management of the pasture.
Okay.
I'm hoping we can discuss about the management of it. So now on the dairy farmer, on the beef farmer who has got animals going for pen fattening, they need something that has got higher protein content. Still, we're talking of the carbohydrates, a grass, and that brings in a grass called kikuyu, for example.
Okay.
So your kikuyu is a heavy feeder. It talks also on how much the farmer should invest into looking after the crop. It requires also more water.
Yes. Thank you so much, Tinashe. That was very detailed. Now, viewers, we're going to go on a short commercial break. We'll be right back with this and more in the third and final segment of your program. Stay tuned. Welcome back, viewers. You are watching Agricultural New Directions, Agribusiness. We are in the third and final segment of our program. I'm still at it. I'm joined by Tinashe Mugadza, the Business Development Executive at SSC's right here in Zimbabwe. Now, earlier on, before we went to the break, Tinashe, you were still talking about the management aspect. I understand that management is broad, and you have a lot to add on to that. Can you be brief and touch on management of pastures?
Thank you so much. You know, when you're agronomists, you're always somehow pastures and we talk a lot. I hope I will be able to manage.
Okay.
Management, the key things of all is a proper pasture establishment.
Okay.
Remember, we talked some, they are perennial crops. So you plant once, you use it for 10 years.
Yes.
So the establishment is key. On the establishment, the key things, number one, we need to get our soil conditioned.
Okay.
pH wise.
Okay.
Nutritional wise. So we need to take our soils for sampling. That's key. Number two, we need to give it proper and recommended or prescribed fertilizers
Okay.
from the results of soil sampling.
Okay.
The third, on the soil or on the establishment would be the actual establishment of the crop.
Okay.
You would see most of these pastures, the seed size is very small. They are
Okay.
very tiny.
They are
so
minute.
we need to prepare our soil to a fine tooth.
Okay.
That gives a maximum seed soil contact.
Okay.
And that also talks to the germination of it. When you've got a good seed soil contact, the pastures can germinate properly.
Okay.
The moment we have got that done properly, then we are poised for a good pasture crop.
Okay.
When it germinates, after germination, the key things would be your first fertilizer application.
Okay.
It also which saves on the nutrition part of it. The second thing on that would be to look after our crops from the weeds. We need to do weeding.
Okay.
But some they ask me, which herbicides do we do? How best can we do? The one thing I love about pastures, they can self-manage weeds. But
Okay.
how do you do it? If we establish it properly, I give you an example of Lucerne. You can see here there are no weeds here.
Was it is total ground cover?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. You should be a farmer.
I am.
Okay. And the same with your kikuya. It's a heavy feeder. It's very aggressive. It just covers your ground. So the weeds, they do not have space.
Okay.
Which talks to the proper establishment.
Okay.
So which makes also the management of the pasture throughout to be more
Okay,
easy.
can I just ask you one question that I know that our audience at home might want to know? In terms of this Lucerne, to say that it is now suitable for grazing, how long does it take?
Okay, great.
From
if we
establishment
establish
to grazing.
our pasture correctly, on average of all the pasture crops that are perennial, on average, we should get 4 to 12 cuttings.
Okay.
Lucerne, you can get an average of 8 cuttings per season. And specifically on Lucerne, because you have asked, you get up to 15 tons of biomass or herbage
Okay.
per year. And the first cutting, you get it from 8 weeks after emergence.
Okay.
And then from the 8 weeks, you can then cut 3 to 4 weeks after.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Now let us talk in terms of. I understand that our Zimbabwean farmers, just to take away from what you were saying just now, we have winter where there is no rainfall, and most of our Zimbabwean farmers want to ensure a balanced diet. In terms of feeding methods or techniques that can be used when you are doing pastures, what are the methods or techniques available for the different livestock?
Thank you so much. That is very key and important. But I'll be quick and I'll summarize it into 2. Number 1, when you've got a pasture and you want to feed it to our animals, the first and the common thing is we can graze.
Okay.
We graze the grass, we graze the lucerne, we do grazing. And on grazing, if it's lucerne, for example, we need to check domens. If we have got time, we're going to talk about domens.
Okay.
You know, lucerne have got so many varieties that we have, and they have got different domens levels. And the different levels of domens also speaks to the feeding method. Going ahead with the methods, then the second, which is related to grazing, we can be cutting.
Okay.
You know, we can cut and feed our animals.
Okay.
This happens when, for example, it's a first cutting, especially on the annual crops. So you don't want to let your animals in because it's an annual crop, it's only for 1 year. Like your lab, your velvet bean. So if you let your goats in, if you let your cattle in, then they are not going, you know, to do justice. Instead of just grazing and leave the other one to grow again, they end up taking out the plant. So you then cut and feed.
Okay.
The third, the second is cutting and then we preserve it. I like you mentioned about winter in Zimbabwe.
Yes.
It's good to emphasize that our animals can still get a balanced diet
In winter, during
despite having rainfall or not. So on that, we need to preserve. We maximize during the rain season and then we preserve. When we preserve, there are 2 basic methods that we use. It's either we make hay or we make silage.
Okay.
So hay is more of the dried part of this preservation, which is more like a mufushwa.
Yes.
that we preserve and we give to our animals. We take our lucerne, we preserve it under a shade. What we want to emphasize is to avoid the direct sunlight so that our plants can dry without exposed to direct sunlight. Zuva, extracts
Some
all
of the
the nutrients.
Okay.
Yeah. So I see most farmers, when they harvest their maize, they put their maize residues on top of something which they call in Shona dara, and then they say no, they in their areas and say no, I've got my feed for animals, but sunlight every day taking out all the nutrients.
Yes.
Silage, when we're making silage now, we're preserving more like as it is. We want to try to maintain its freshness.
Yes.
So when we preserve a silage, we cut, we preserve it without access to air, so that the moment we do it without access to air, we activate the lactic acid in it, which helps us in the breaking down of it.
Okay.
If we have time, we're going to talk more in detail. But the key things when we want to preserve, the key things is we want to cut our crop at its maximum, or at that point when it's having the nutrients in the plant in the leaves, at the upper part of the plant.
Okay.
Remember, what we are interested in the crop are the nutrients.
Okay.
So when those nutrients, they are on the upper part of the plant. So what then happens, usually on up to 10%, from 0 to 10% of flowering, that's when we have got the maximum plant nutrients in the upper part of the plant. And we encourage farmers to then cut, because if they delay, we are sharing our nutrients that we're interested in with the flowers that are developing now. So that stage is important. It's basic. We fertilize our plants and all the feed from basic biology, the plants from the roots, but now we're preparing for flowering. So it means we're preparing for an offspring on the upper part of the plant. So what it means is then all the feed that is down there is going up the plant. And the moment it goes up, because it's going up the plant for the purposes of the offspring, but it's going up the plant, and it's that time that we're interested in, and we get the maximum of
That's
it.
the strategic time.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you so much, Tinashe. It was a pleasure having you with us today.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Now, viewers, there you heard it. We were talking of pasture production in terms of maintaining a balanced diet for our livestock. Even during winter, our livestock can still have a balanced diet. From me, your host, Wadzanai Manyore, and the crew behind the scenes, have yourselves a fabulous evening. Thank you for watching.